Hello, wrestling fans, and welcome to another VHS review. As this time around, it's Jersey All Pro Wrestling's 7-year anniversary show. This event took place back on September 18th, 2004, from the Rahway Recreation Center in Rahway, New Jersey. Now, this very show was pretty much a turning point when it came to JAPW, because they had taken the previous summer off, and boy, did they come back with this particular event. Wait till you hear all about it. So here we go. We actually begin with four pre-show matches. First is a women's match. We have Tara Charisma going one-on-one with Alicia. Now, these two ladies had already faced each other in the past. Tara was a trainee of Mikey Whipwreck. Alicia came out of the IWF of Kevin Knight in West Paterson, New Jersey. I think it was like maybe the biggest crowd those two ladies got to work in front of to date. Alicia hit the sidewalk slam, which I still refer to as the late Dino Bravo's move. She hit her hip toss of doom and finished Tara Charisma off with the A-bomb, which is her version of the Michinoku driver. In that second matchup, we see Dan Barry go one-on-one with Ash Samuels. Dan Barry came out of the New York Wrestling Connection in Long Island. Ash Samuels, unless I'm wrong, was a member of the Ring of Honor faction Special K. These two guys really didn't click too well, and Barry was pinned by Samuels after a Death Valley driver. Next up, commentator Mark Clemson attempts to have an interview with Jay Lethal about his ladder match with Asriel for the Light Heavyweight Championship. Before Lethal even says a word, Asriel attacks him from behind, and I noticed JPW's matchmaker Ray Sager, manager Johnny D, and a few referees try to break them up from the brawl. Eventually, Asriel's taken back to the curtain. Lethal runs back to the curtain. The two of them come brawling back out the curtain, and they're broken up again. Lethal gets the microphone. He's daring Asriel to come back out, and Asriel does. And they're like going at it in the ring until some wrestlers who were on the show come out to break it up. A nice little tease to what the proverbial appetite for their match later on. The third match of the pre-show, we see Javier, even though Mark Clemson referred to him as Tommy Sills, go one-on-one with James Newblood. Newblood defeated Javier with a shooting star senton from the top rope. These two men will go on to become aerial assault in NYWC until Newblood had a career-ending injury in June of 2005, where he got hurt in a TLC match with the SAT. And then, in the fourth and final match of the pre-show, Pinky Sanchez went one-on-one with EC Negro of the Dirty Rotten Scoundrels. This, I believe, was Pinky's second pre-show match in JPW. EC Negro pinned Pinky with the Dirty Rotten Driver, which that's what Mark Clemson called it. I don't know if that is the Emerald Fusion or the Emerald Erosion that the late Mitsuharu Misawa was known for throughout his career, but Negro picked up the win. Then it was on to the main show, as we had Mark Clemson commentating the show with the late Fat Frank Idavia, who was the founder and promoter of the company up until his passing in 2015, and also Monster Mac would be commentating the second half of the show. The opening match of the main show, we see Justice Payne, who passed away earlier this year, managed by Johnny D, take on the Insane Dragon. All apologies to those who knew Fat Frank personally, whether you knew him away from the business or not, but he kept screaming on commentary. And early going of the matchup, Dragon knocks Payne off the apron and into the front row. Dragon does a body press off the top rope onto Payne, who was still in the crowd, even though Clemson called it a moonsault. Back in the ring, Payne eventually hits two forms of his move, the Payne Thriller, a Death Valley driver followed by an Olympic slam that Kurt Angle was known for, and pinned Dragon to pick up the win. After the match, Johnny D brings a chair to the ring, but then out comes the H Effect, Deranged and Dixie, and they double clothesline Payne out of the ring. Eventually, Johnny's other charges, the Solution, Papa Don and Havoc come out, and they go after the H Effect. Payne hits Dragon with the chair on the floor, and they brawl to the back. Also, out comes the hip-hop overflow, Rush Margera, and JAPW's resident Batman fan, Corvus Fear. And also out comes All Money is Legal, K Murda, and K Pusha, accompanied by Dizzy. It just so happened these 4 tag teams were facing each other for the tag team championship, and the match eventually got underway right then and there. And there was so much hecticness in this matchup, so too much to even call. But among the highlights, Johnny D threw a fireball at Rush Margera. K Pusha jumped off the top rope and did a leaping X Factor onto someone. The end came when Papa Don put one of them on his shoulder and was stood on a chair and pile drove the guy on the chair and pinned him to retain the tag team championship. And they eventually get the microphone. They're claiming they're the best team. Out come the Christopher Street Connection. And Christopher Street hit the ring. Solution attempt to attack them, but the Mason Buffy, Christopher Street Connection, blasts the Solution with a pair of confetti poppers. You know, they opened them up and the confetti went all right in their faces. And then they kissed both members of Solution. And one, Mace or Buffy, I forgot which one, kissed Johnny D as well. And Johnny D looks at the camera and says, "I'm not gay. I swear to God, I'm not gay." And Solution and Johnny D left the ringside area. Next up was a battle of debuts, as we saw XS challenge Mr. Wrestling Kevin Steen, who we know as Kevin Owens, for the International Wrestling Syndicate. I apologize, I got the words wrong for that. It was a promotion up in Canada where these 2 guys were born and bred. Well, their careers got started there anyway, along with many others. Great matchup here, as these guys really tore the house down and really brought it to the crowd, and they earned the crowd's respect. At one point, XS did a half crab into the ropes, reminiscent of Tajiri's Tarantula. XS leaped off the second rope and caught Kevin with a DDT on the apron. Pretty sick bump. Kevin eventually retaliated by powerbombing Steen on the apron. Steen powerbombed XS on the apron. Steen eventually hits a dragon suplex, the kryptonite crunch. The end came when Steen used a super backbreaker from the top rope, followed by a moonsault, followed by the package pile driver to put XS down for the count and retain the IWS Heavyweight Championship. Unfortunately, Fat Frank, I understand, he said he had lost his voice and decided he was done commentating for the night, so that's when Monster Mac took over. Next matchup saw another battle of debuts, as Beef Wellington went one-on-one with Super Dragon. This matchup, 1 point earlier in the match, Dragon did a suicide dive, missed Wellington, and ended up in the crowd. Wellington recovered, eventually hits an atomic drop, and then he leaped off the top rope and delivered an ass punch to Super Dragon. Yes, folks, he jumped off the top rope, and he literally punched Super Dragon right in the ass. Dragon eventually recovered by using the original curb stomp, not the one Seth Rollins uses. Wellington responded with a Cobra Clutch suplex. Dragon hit a flurry of kicks, including Kawada kicks, and then Dragon finished off Wellington with a Psycho Driver to pick up the victory. Next up was 6-man tag team action, as the Amazing Red and his cousins, the SAT, Joel and Jose Maximo, did battle with Sanjay Dutt, Josh Prohibition, and M-Dog 20, who we know as Matt, later went by the name Matt Cross. I'm not sure if that's his real name. Eventually, Sanjay hits Jose or Joel with a Rewind Rana. They did some triple team moves on M-Dog 20. At one point, they did another triple team move on either M-Dog or Prohibition. Sanjay leaped off the top rope, Hurricane Rounded one of the Maximos, but in the process, Sanjay hurt his arm and the match had to be stopped. And the ring announcer told the crowd they were going to take an intermission. And then they came back, resuming the show with what had become a tradition at JAPW anniversary events. It was none other than the best of the light heavyweights elimination matchup. We had the debuting Chasin' Rance versus the debuting El Generico, who later became Sami Zayn, versus 2 men who've been to JAPW in the past. the Grim Reaper and Jack Evans. In this matchup, we saw, wow, a lot of dives, of course, but pretty much some sickness in this matchup. Generico hits a Yakuza kick on Reefer, and eventually he pins Generico pins Rance with a brain buster in the middle of the ring. Later in the match, Jack Evans was caught sitting on the second rope. Generico climbs up, and he gives Evans a brain buster onto the very turnbuckle, or perhaps the very hook that connected the turnbuckle to the ring post, and that popped the crowd. They were shocked. And you even hear Monster Mac on commentary saying, brain buster! Brain buster! So, so it's like, some history was made. Something was born right then and there. Eventually, Reefer puts Generico away with a pile driver, followed by a frog splash from the top rope. By the way, during this match, Monster Mac elected to do some Japanese commentary during this match. Now it was down to two men. Eventually, Grim Reaper gives Evans a superplex to the floor. Talk about a sick bump right there. And there were no pads, right onto the parquet floor. Eventually, Evans bounced back and hits Reefer with a 630 splash and pinned him to win the Best of the Light Heavyweights match that year. And even Evans started a little JAP chant with the crowd. Next up was a match for the Heavyweight Championship as the late Trent Acid, accompanied to ring by his tag team partner, the other half of the Backseat Boys, Johnny Kashmere, as Acid challenged Dan Moft for the Heavyweight Championship of Jersey All Pro Wrestling. Now, when Acid came out for his matchup, he actually went into the crowd, and at one point he went up the bleachers, and he noticed four good-looking ladies. Among them was Ariana Hilario, and I think they all kissed him on the cheek before he came back down the bleachers for the match. And then, and the match was underway, and I know they started slow, but when Moft did his suicide dive to the floor pretty early in this one, and Acid threw Moft into the guardrail a few times while on the floor. Wow. Back in the ring, Moft hit the cannonball in the corner, gave Acid a Northern Light suplex into the turnbuckle. Moft hit the Kobashi Plex. Acid hit a moonsault to the floor onto Moft, who was laying on a bed of chairs. Acid hit a Yakuza kick, but Moft kicked out. Acid hit a second Yakuza kick. Moft kicked out again. Acid hits a Yakuza kick to the back of Moft's head. He went for another Yakuza kick to Moft's face, but Moft avoided it, scooped Acid up, gave him the burning hammer onto a bed of chairs in the ring, and pinned him to retain the championship. Okay, next up was a match between the New Age Punisher, B-Boy, and Low-Key. Quite a hectic match this was, where Low-Key hit Kobashi chops, jumped up the second rope with a title crush kick. He gave B-Boy the bite of the dragon, which is the dragon sleeper clutch into the ropes. B-Boy retaliated by hitting a diving drop kick while Low-Key sitting in the corner. B-Boy hit a Death Valley driver. Low-Key recovered with two capo kicks, a move that was called Black Magic, and put B-Boy down for the 3 count with the Key Crusher. Next up was the long-awaited rematch between the notorious 187 Homicide and Teddy Hart, who faced each other earlier in the year at JAPW. This matchup, Teddy hits Homicide early with a scoop slam into a neck breaker. Homicide recovers with a lariato. Teddy bounces back, hitting a pile driver with the assistance of the ropes. Teddy went for a moonsault onto the floor, but Homicide pulled Jack Evans into the way. And I don't know what went wrong, but Teddy bled, so I don't know if he hit his head on the floor or on the guardrail. Homicide had some kind of object in hand. He hit Evans over the head with it. Homicide pulled out a fork and proceeded to fork Teddy Hart up, kept stabbing him in the head, and Teddy's like covering up, and he's getting stabbed in his hand too, and I could see like one of his hands was like not 100% for the match. Homicide ends up knocking down Ref Hansen. Poor guy. Eventually, Homicide jumps off the top rope, splashes Teddy Hart through a table on the floor. But eventually, Evans comes out attacking Homicide. Low-Key comes out attacking Evans. But then B-Boy comes out. B-Boy and Low-Key are like face-to-face arguing a little bit. And B-Boy, Low-Key, and Homicide proceed to do a number on Evans and Hart. Homicide gives Evans the cop killer. Low-Key gives Hart the key crusher. And then Low-Key proceeds to... He takes Teddy's blood and he's like using it as war paint on B-Boy's arm, while Homicide's got the microphone calling out Teddy Hart's family, his uncle Bret the Hitman Hart, Bruce Hart, one of Bret's older brothers, and Jim the Anvil Neidhart, who has since passed away. And Low-Key, Homicide, and B-Boy, three of them left the ring, Hart and Evans laying in the ring. Then we reach the final match of the night as Asriel challenges Jay Lethal for the light heavyweight championship in a ladder match. Early on, at one point, of course, the ladder is always bound to come into play when it comes to ladder matches, folks. Lethal was caught between the ladder and the guardrail. Asriel gave Lethal 2 kicks to the back, leaped over him, ended up in the crowd. Asriel nails Lethal with a drop kick. Lethal, back in the ring, Lethal retaliated, did a springboard drop kick off the top rope, drop kicking the ladder into as Asriel was holding onto it. Lethal wheelbarrow suplexed, had Asriel for a wheelbarrow suplex, and the back of Asriel's head was getting hit by the ladder, and then Lethal wheelbarrow suplexed, did a wheelbarrow suplex onto the canvas. Asriel brought a chair into play. They both ended up in the crowd brawling. They went up the bleachers. That was like a highlight of JAPW shows for those who never got to attend. They went up the bleachers. Lethal tried to do a back suplex on the bleachers, but Asriel kept catching him with knees to the head. Asriel hits Lethal with a sick DDT on the bleachers. Lethal goes crumbling down the bleachers. At that point, Asriel notices Lethal's mom and dad, who, by the way, for those who don't know, Lethal's mother was like the ultimate cheerleader. And Asriel threw a cup in Papa Lethal's face, but the patriarch of the Lethal family slaps Asriel, and he goes tumbling down the bleachers, to the delight of the crowd, too. Asriel they eventually come back to the ring. Asriel does a stomp off the ladder onto Lethal, who was on a bed of chairs. Asriel did a diamond dust off the ladder. That was, for those who know, that was Masato Tanaka's, one of his moves he was known for. Lethal jumps off the ladder with a diving headbutt. Asriel did a back suplex off the ladder. Lethal hit the jumping DDT off the ladder. It eventually ended when Lethal actually did a top rope powerbomb onto Asriel through a table, and then Lethal climbed the ladder and grabbed the belt to retain the light heavyweight championship. And they really took it to each other, and Lethal was like down on the mat, and even Dan Moff, who helped train Lethal, who I understand was like a mentor and trainer to Lethal, he was checking on him after the match was over. And man, this was one of those shows that I'm sure people were talking about in the days and weeks that followed. And my. I mean, this show had so much. You had returns to JAPW. You had debuts. You had great wrestling. You had a ladder match. You had sick bumps. You had so much to be said about this show. I mean, I was glad to be there with my personal Dr. Frankenstein to indie wrestling, Tony. And what a crazy, hectic show this was. And pretty much, even though earlier that year in 2004, was my first JAPW show, which but this show proved that JAPW was going to be around, was still alive and kicking for anyone who doubted them at the time. But they basically showed, that they were already a force on the indies, but they were starting to, I'm sure, get more and more recognition after this very show. And even watching this show earlier today, I mean, I still have flashbacks of keeping up with so much that I had written down and what went on in this show. But after all the matches were done, they show some music videos of some of the matches, and they show a promo by the Strong Style Thugs. And Loki was sporting, I don't know if it was the shoes I think Jack Evans had. And as they're walking off camera, Loki says, "Hey, how much do you think I can get for these?" And my. It was, you know, basically, so much followed with JEP because they kept the momentum going as 2004 continued and even into 2005. That was an awesome time for this promotion. Okay, that'll do it for this VHS review, and I sure hope to have more reviews of past independent wrestling shows that either I attended or I have on videotape or DVD.